What? And that whole stupid thing about me complaining about the pecs and the rock hard abs, or, well, washboard abs, was because Janelle saw me as a piece of meat.
Friends, it's me, Meerab, and welcome back to Starspill USA, the place where truth doesn't hide, where drama unfolds without a filter, and where the untold stories of sister wives come to life in all their raw and riveting detail. The air inside the courthouse that morning carried a strange heaviness, the kind of weight that presses on your chest before a storm breaks. It wasn't just another day, and this wasn't just another case. This was the day Kody Brown, the man who for over a decade strutted across our TV screens as the smiling, self-assured patriarch of a sprawling plural family, would find himself stripped of the bright lights and friendly edits. This was no sister wives family meeting where he could spin the conversation, raise his voice over dissent, and steer the outcome. This was an actual court of law. Here, the rules weren't his to make. The gavel would fall, the record would be permanent. And the truth, the kind of truth reality TV can't edit away, was about to be dragged into the open. All rise. The command cut through the room like a blade, sharp and unyielding. People stood, the sound of shuffling feet and creaking benches echoing against the cold marble walls. Kody rose last, slow, reluctant. His hands were tight fists at his sides, the kind of fists you make when you're fighting the urge to lash out, but no, you can't. His face, usually so ready with that half smirk for the cameras, looked stiff now, almost drained of color. That famous smug confidence had slipped, and in its place, fear. A thin, cold fear he couldn't quite hide. For over a decade, America had watched him. 4 wives, 18 children, and one carefully crafted image of a blessed plural marriage. On screen, we saw unity. Mary, the loyal first wife who once held the only legal title. Janelle, the practical problem solver who quietly kept the family afloat. Christine, the cheerful homemaker whose smile never seemed to falter. And Robyn, the youngest and most emotional, the one who always seemed to have Kody's undivided attention. The show painted them as a family of faith, struggling yet surviving together, bound by love and their shared religious convictions. But that glossy portrait had long since begun to crack. Off camera, the fractures had deepened, the trust had rotted, and what once seemed like a quirky but functioning family was now a battlefield. And on this day, in this courtroom, 3 of Kody's 4 wives stood against him. No longer sister wives in the spiritual sense, but plaintiffs in a legal war. Mary, Janelle, and Christine sat together on one side, their lawyers flanking them like guards at the gate. Robyn was conspicuously absent. That empty chair beside Kody was louder than any testimony. Whatever the reason for her absence, the message was clear. The alliance that once defined this family had dissolved into nothing but fractured loyalties and private agendas. The courtroom was packed. Media crews had set up camp outside since dawn, circling the building like vultures. Inside, whispers ran through the gallery, legal analysts speculating on strategies. Die-hard fans clutching homemade signs that read, "Justice for the wives and Kody is innocent." The air buzzed with expectation, but under it all was a hum of something darker. The sense that no matter who technically won today, the Brown family we thought we knew was already gone. The judge entered, a tall, silver-haired woman with eyes like tempered steel. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "This case," she began, her voice measured and cold, "is not, strictly speaking, about the breakdown of a marriage. It is about spiritual exploitation, the misuse of shared finances, emotional equity, and the collapse of what was publicly presented as a cohesive family." Her words landed like hammer blows. This wasn't going to be about he said, she said drama. This was going to be about the cold mechanics of power, control, and money. Christine's attorney rose first, and with that, the floodgates opened. She began reading aloud from personal journals, clips from the Sister Wives show, and even audio recordings. Moments where Kody's dismissiveness bled through, unfiltered. The courtroom listened to his voice in one particularly chilling clip. "I don't owe anyone apologies for who I love more. I'm not running a democracy." The silence that followed was absolute. Christine sat still, hands folded in her lap, her face unreadable. Her attorney continued, detailing years of emotional neglect, the unequal distribution of affection, and the financial system that, in her words, bound my client to a life that prioritized one wife's comfort over the well-being of all others. Then came the bombshell. Christine wasn't just seeking legal separation. She was demanding a formal court finding that the family's entire financial structure was coercive and abusive. A forensic financial analyst had combed through the accounts. The numbers told their own damning story. More than $2.7 million, earmarked for family use, was either missing or had been funneled into Robyn's personal properties, her business ventures, or her own private accounts. Christine's legal demand was bold: freeze all family assets and launch a full audit of the Brown family trust. Kody's attorney tried to counter, accusing the wives of bitterness, claiming the media had warped the narrative, insisting Kody was being punished for loving openly, but the judge wasn't swayed. She turned directly to Kody. "Did you ever legally safeguard the interests of your other wives? Deeds to homes, business shares, contracts?" Kody hesitated, his jaw tightening. "No," he finally admitted, "but we were under a bond of faith." The judge's reply was instant. Faith is not a contract. And in this courtroom, emotional manipulation masquerading as religious harmony is not a defense. The ruling came swiftly. All known family accounts were to be frozen. Kody was prohibited from selling property, and all business income would be held in escrow pending investigation. Christine emerged from the courthouse wearing a small, measured smile. Not victory, but relief. "I'm not doing this out of anger," she told reporters. "I'm doing this to protect myself and my children. We lived under one man's vision for too long. It's time we protect our own." Kody left the building alone, surrounded by paparazzi, his eyes fixed on the pavement. The man who once held an entire family and a TV empire under his control now walked to his car with nothing but the rustle of legal documents in his hands and the echo of the gavel in his ears. What Christine had done wasn't just a separation. It was a calculated, methodical dismantling of the structure Kody had built. For years, she'd been this smiling third wife, baking, homeschooling, playing the part of the happy plural partner. But behind that warmth had been years of emotional abandonment, gaslighting, and spiritual manipulation. And rather than exploding, on camera, she had waited. She had watched, she had documented. When she finally moved, it was with precision. A formal request for separation that cited irreparable emotional trauma and prolonged spiritual neglect. But the real surprise was her legal arsenal: lawyers, child psychologists, financial experts, and even a media strategist. Christine's legal narrative was devastating. She'd entered a faith-based union that promised equality among wives. But what she received was exclusion, humiliation, and decades of emotional deprivation. Piece by piece, her attorneys laid out the evidence: journal entries, private emails, screenshots, video clips. And ironically, some of the strongest evidence came from Kody himself, courtesy of the very TLC cameras that had made him famous. Clips of him rejecting Christine's affection, belittling her opinions, and, in one unforgettably cruel confession, stating outright, "I don't want to be intimate with Christine. I don't feel that way." Christine's fight wasn't just for herself. It was for her youngest child, truly. Since Christine's move to Utah, Kody had shown minimal involvement. Missing school events, medical appointments, even holidays. A family therapist testified that truly displayed signs of emotional distress linked to her father's absence. Christine sought full custody with Kody's visitation supervised, plus retroactive child support dating back to the separation. And then came the property claims: the Flagstaff home she'd raised her children in, her investment share in the Coyote Pass land. and 50% of all earnings tied to the sister wives' brand. Kody's team argued these claims were invalid. The wives weren't legally recognized, the assets weren't jointly owned. But Christine's attorneys pushed back. My client gave 27 years of her life to this man and the system he controlled. She built his home, raised his children, contributed to his brand, and in return, she was erased. By the time the day ended, one thing was clear. The gavel hadn't just come down on a legal dispute. It had fallen on an empire.
Relationships,
Yeah.
sex is part of it, but that's not a focus.
But was it a physical relationship where you both were just attracted to each other?
No, is the
Christine's attorney allowed a small knowing grin to flicker across her face. Then let's let the court determine, she said calmly, if spiritual exploitation is, in fact, a legal consideration. The line landed like a challenge, the kind that shifts the energy in a courtroom. Everyone thought they'd seen the biggest blows already. The asset freezes, the custody demands, the financial revelations. But Christine's team wasn't finished. Not even close. They filed a fresh motion right then and there, a petition for a gag order against Kody Brown. The reason? They accused him of using the internet as a weapon, defaming Christine, deceiving the public, and dragging Truly into public conversations in a way that violated her privacy. Screenshots were entered into evidence. Kody speaking on podcasts, popping up in live streams, commenting in fan groups. Each clip showed him accusing Christine of poisoning the children against him, painting her as greedy, even suggesting she had run off with money that wasn't hers. Christine's representatives framed it as a calculated smear campaign, intimidation by public shaming, and manipulation of the court of public opinion. The judge reviewed the request quietly, flipping through the exhibits without expression. After a pause, she granted the order until the custody hearing was complete. Both parties were barred from making public comments about one another on any platform. A social media silence had been imposed. Then came the moment Christine herself took the stand. There was no television lighting, no makeup artist waiting in the wings, no TLC crew capturing her best angles. Just Christine, a woman, a mother, speaking plainly into the stillness of the courtroom. I tried to be the perfect sister. Wife, she began, her voice steady but carrying an undertone of exhaustion. I believed in our family. I believed Kody loved us all equally, but I was wrong. He made me feel less than. I begged for connection, for affection, and he told me I was a burden. She looked directly at Kody, her gaze unwavering. I left to protect my peace. I'm here to protect my daughter, and I'm asking this court to help me do that. Even the court reporter, normally a fixture of detachment, seemed to blink back emotion. Kody's cross-examination was relentless. Why hadn't he visited Truly during the holidays? Why had he prioritized Robyn's children over his other kids? Why had Christine never been given legal ownership of anything she'd contributed to? His answers faltered, shifting between deflection and half-formed justifications. At one point, he tried to put the blame on Christine herself, claiming she had grown defiant and withdrawn. The judge's response was swift. Or, she said pointedly, did she become self-sufficient? There is a distinction. It was in that moment that Kody's carefully maintained image, the calm, confident patriarch, the unshakable head of a plural household, began to crumble in real time. Every contradiction, every defensive outburst, every vague answer chipped away at the man the public thought they knew. By the end of the session, the judge delivered a preliminary ruling. Christine would have temporary full custody of Truly. Kody would have bi-weekly supervised visitation. A monetary mediator would be appointed to begin assessing Christine's property and income claims. The non-disparagement order would remain in effect. Christine left the courthouse with her chin lifted. There was no gloating in her expression, no visible satisfaction, only relief. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her life, her daughter, and her peace of mind. She had fought back not with screaming or theatrics, but with patience and unshakable resolve. But the war wasn't over. The next act in this family's legal saga came from an unexpected corner. The woman who had long been seen as the quiet one. The steadying presence, the voice of reason. Janelle Brown. She walked into the courtroom without fuss, without tears, and without a hint of the drama that had surrounded Christine's testimony. What she carried instead were hard, cold numbers, spreadsheets, tax returns, bank statements, contracts, and years of digital paper trails. For years, Janelle had been the practical wife. She didn't break down crying on camera. She didn't erupt in anger during family meetings. She kept the wheels turning, managing grocery bills for nearly 24 people, paying utilities, working real estate deals, and covering expenses when the family fell short. She'd bought into Kody's vision of one big family under one roof, sharing everything, and she'd worked tirelessly to make that dream possible. But before she filed anything in court, she'd been doing her homework. Months earlier, she'd quietly hired a forensic accountant, handing over years of financial records, joint accounts, personal contributions, revenue from TLC contracts, speaking fees, book royalties, merchandise sales. The findings were damning. Over 6 years, more than $88 million in combined family income had been funneled into privately controlled accounts to which only Kody and in certain cases Robyn, had access. Bank statements, wire transfer logs, and emails between Kody and TLC producers showed funds being used to pay Robyn's home mortgage and to bankroll her struggling jewelry business. My sister wife's closet, which none of the other wives could touch. When Janelle's attorneys laid out her case, they didn't appeal to sympathy. They appealed to evidence. Transaction records showed Janelle depositing large sums into joint accounts, followed by unexplained withdrawals authorized by Kody. There were no records of reimbursements for her contributions to family expenses. The judge, thumbing through the exhibits, stopped mid-page. "Mrs. Brown, you're telling me you invested in multiple family homes, land development, and joint business projects, and your name doesn't appear on a single legal document?" Janelle's answer was quiet but firm. "That's right, Your Honor. We were told everything was for all of us, but in the end, it all went to Kody and Robyn." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. One of Janelle's key grievances centered on Coyote. Past the sprawling Arizona property Kody had once pitched as the family's shared future. For years, no building had been done. No houses, no progress. But the bills kept coming: mortgage, payments, taxes, permits. Janelle testified she'd invested over $300,000 into the land, believing she'd eventually live there with her children. Then came her revelation. Kody had already begun drafting plans for a home solely for Robyn on that very property without ever telling the other wives. The court was shown email chains, signed proposals, and zoning requests, all naming Robyn as the homeowner. Not a single mention of Janelle, Christine, or Mary. This wasn't miscommunication, Janelle's attorney told the judge. This was deliberate. This was a dream sold to secure investment, then discarded in favor of one beneficiary. Janelle's testimony carried no theatrical flair. It was measured matter-of-fact. "I stayed loyal when others questioned him. I worked when others rested. I carried the financial load because I believed we would all reap the rewards together. In the end, I wasn't a wife. I was a bank account with a smile. I didn't leave for revenge. I left because I couldn't keep funding a love story I wasn't part of." The line seemed to land like a body blow. Kody had once dismissed Janelle publicly as emotionally distant, implying their marriage lacked warmth. But in court, her quiet, precise dismantling of his financial practices left him with no shield. His lawyers tried to argue that no formal financial arrangements had existed, that all contributions were voluntary. Spiritual families didn't operate under the same rules as business contracts. Janelle's attorney cut straight through. This was not a conventional marriage. This was a business operation cloaked in spiritual language. My client was financially manipulated under that structure. The judge listened closely, then spoke with deliberate weight. The court acknowledges the spiritual framework you describe, but it must also acknowledge when those roles are used to consolidate financial power at the expense of others. This is not about marriage. This is about contractual fairness. Janelle's demands were clear: a full court-ordered forensic audit of all Brown family finances over the last decade, repayment of 50% of her contributions to Coyote Pass, a share of all profits from the Sister Wives brand and merchandise, a freeze on all joint assets until equitable division and restitution for all unauthorized withdrawals from joint accounts. The judge granted temporary freezes and appointed a financial mediator. It was another direct hit to Kody, whose exposure now extended beyond family court into potential civil liability. Then came the final surprise of the day. Janelle's lawyer produced an email from Kody to a TLC executive, proposing a spin-off focused solely on his life with Robyn. The message, dated months before Christine's departure, openly discussed the waning relevance of the other wives and suggested shifting the brand entirely towards the couple's relationship. The implication was clear. Kody had not only been isolating his wives in private life, but had also been maneuvering to erase them from the very platform that generated their income. This, Janelle's attorney told the court, is not just personal exclusion. It is calculated professional sabotage. Outside, the media pounced on the developments. Headlines screamed, "Janelle Brown exposes financial abuse." "Kody Brown faces forensic audit. Was Coyote Pass always meant for Robyn?" Kody left the courthouse tight-lipped, his once untouchable image now weighed down by allegations of manipulation, deception, and betrayal.
It just had to be always positive and upbeat and whatever you need, and absolutely, and yeah, it's so funny. It's like, I didn't mind. It's supposed to what I did, and it was completely fine until...
The judge, a serious yet compassionate man in his early 60s, adjusted his glasses and began to speak. He had sat through endless hours of testimony, stories of control, gaslighting, and emotional abandonment backed by hard evidence in the form of bank statements, text messages, and even deeply personal family videos. His voice carried the weight of the moment as he declared the sheer complexity of the matter before him. This, he began, is not merely a case of divorce or custody. This is decades of polygamy, family manipulation, and emotional abuse, all tightly woven into the fabric of religious faith. The words seemed to hang in the air, pressing down on everyone present. Kody Brown's jaw stiffened, while Robyn Brown lowered her head, eyes fixed on the table. The judge's tone softened, yet his authority did not waver. "The law cannot erase pain or rewrite history," he continued. "But it can set boundaries, it can protect, and it can create justice." The silence that followed was thick, the kind that seemed to muffle even the sound of breath. Then came the first blow money. With a stern expression, the judge announced that Kody Brown had been found guilty of mismanaging the joint family finances, using funds intended for the collective well-being of all its wives to serve only one Robyn Brown. This mismanagement included house purchases, hefty legal bills, and extravagant personal expenses, all made without the consent of the other stakeholders in the family's income. The court ruled it a breach of trust and a violation of their communal financial agreements. As part of restitution, Kody was ordered to pay $280,000 to Christine, Janelle, and Mary, divided according to each wife's contributions and losses. Gasps broke out in the room. Even Robyn went pale, shaken not just by the verdict, but by the realization that the money she had counted on for her children's future would now be gone. Kody, sweating under the weight of the judgment, leaned towards his attorney, trying to whisper only for the judge to continue without pause. The next ruling struck even deeper. While many of the Brown children are now adults, the judge explained, there are still minors whose emotional and psychological well-being has been damaged by the environment in which they were raised. He read excerpts from a damning psychologist's report, one that had already sent ripples through the courtroom earlier in the week. It revealed how some children felt abandoned, unloved, and even manipulated by a father who was emotionally unavailable and prone to unpredictable favoritism. Based on this, the court granted Kody only supervised visitation for the next 18 months, with the condition that he engage in family therapy and demonstrate behavioral change. Custody and guardianship were handed fully to the respective mothers. Christine clung to her lawyer in relief. Janelle's eyes brimmed with tears. And Robyn sat speechless, not because she disagreed, but because she had never imagined the court would see Kody as a harmful influence even on her own children. Then came the most unexpected and devastating part of the judgment. The judge addressed the emotional abuse directly. Overwhelming testimony, corroborated by expert analysis and first-hand accounts, confirms a long-standing pattern of emotional coercion, religious manipulation, and control disguised as spiritual leadership, he declared. Kody's lawyer attempted to object, but the sharp crack of the gavel silenced him. The judge acknowledged that Kody had never physically harmed his wives, but concluded that his actions met the legal standard for emotional abuse under state law. The room erupted in murmurs of disbelief. For this, the court ordered Kody to undergo mandatory